Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Good morning, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on where you are around the globe or what your sleep schedule may be. PX Lip is joining me again, as he usually does. Hello, hello.
Seem to just show up all the time, and you just keep
I
keep letting me
keep
send video
inviting
to
you.
you, and
Yeah.
I no.
All right. Glad to have everyone who's here has joined us. Um, there's the plan for today. As usual, we're going to sort of chat about a little bit of the things that sort of interest us that we've come across over the past week or so. But the core topic that I want to uh, get some movement on today is as you might recall from other streams. I do teach a graduate level, master's level introductory class in networking, and we've been talking. If we work our way in the last first couple of weeks of the class towards IP forwarding, and so what you'll see me do today is kind of work up the example network that I'm expecting the students to build, and so I'm going to go through kind of configuring some of the routers and doing some static routing to kind of get a network statically set up, which is the first task that the students are going to have. So I'm kind of just to do some prep work on that to make sure I kind of understand all the implications of that. And we might jump into some more of my C# course if needed, or do other things, or it depends on what things we end up chatting about. So that said, before we get started on that, I should say that so if you're, and I know last time a couple of folks asked about YouTube. I have uploaded the past 2 weeks worth of VODs to YouTube. I'm still, one of the things I didn't get around to this week is I'm still don't have a good editing environment, so they're just the raw VODs, but with chapter markers inserted. So that's at least a start, and I'm going to work my way backwards and get some interesting ones from the weeks and months past uploaded as we go. Especially since at least in the U.S. we have a long weekend coming up. I should have some time to get.
So
So
we
we
do.
do. So I should have some time to get more of that stuff uploaded, and maybe even get myself to the point where I can do some editing and create some short some short clips from some of our VODs. For folks that can't abide, but a 90-minute stream, even with chapter markers, which I totally understand. Um,
You know, attention
all
spans and
that,
all of
yeah.
that. Ooh, pretty.
Yes. So of course this week marked the next launch attempt of Artemis 1. We've talked about
Hmm.
Artemis before. It is the first. Artemis 1 is the first test run of the new Space Launch System and the Orion capsule. This is an unmanned launch designed to orbit the moon a few times and then return, which makes it sound super mundane. Of course, that is already a pretty heavy lift, pun intended. Uh, so
I was wondering if you were going for that.
so needless to say, it is a totally new launch system, and you would expect some uh, 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 some setbacks, right? I mean, SpaceX did when they developed the Falcon launch system, suffered more than a few. Did Elon Musk call them? Uncontrolled disassemblies of the vehicle. Um,
There's a
yeah.
euphemism.
It is totally expected. I mean, the NASA administrator, is an ex-astronaut, was talking about one of the missions he was on. Basically, attempted to launch for five times, and the fifth time was the charm. Um, and I think anyone who has a pass to go see a launch the advice is plan a week vacation in Florida, and you might see a launch, you might not. Don't count on it, especially given the weather in the late summer in the U.S. in Florida. So they were already struggling with meeting their launch criteria for weather-wise, because there were episodes of heavy rain. There were episodes where there were lightning strikes. There were lightning strikes actually relatively close to the facility, and they can't launch when that's going on. And they're just, so it was already relatively iffy anyway. But there are two things. There was one thing that could have stopped them, and they got around. So during fueling, and of course the main lift stage is powered by liquid hydrogen or liquid oxygen. Pretty typical LOX engine. And I don't know, a lot of the technical details. NASA doesn't publish a lot of it, so all I can do is sort of read between the lines in the and some of the launch commentary and the press press briefings. But there's they start filling the tanks relatively slowly to let everything kind of settle down, and then they switch to a high flow mode. And when they did that on Monday, they had a leak in one of the supply lines. As far as I can tell, they basically slowed the hydrogen flow down, let the copious Florida moisture freeze the fitting solid until it was no longer leaking, and then they switched back to the high flow. And on that issue, they announced, no mystery here. So the next launch attempt is going to be Saturday. And it's in the afternoon, so not nearly as painful to watch as that 6 a.m. launch on Monday. This one would be, if they lift off, it would be, I think, 3 p.m. Eastern time, or something like that, 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. So prior to Saturday, they're going to install a platform that allows the technical team to get to these fuel fittings at the tank, and in NASA speak, they will retorque those fittings. In other words, they'll go up there with a wrench and tighten them. Yeah, but good thinking. If it's leaking, let's see if we can make it a bit tighter. No. Kind of logical. So there's that. But that is not what aborted the launch. The issue they ran into was actually a much more subtle one, and it got really complicated. My understanding of it, at least, got complicated by the fact that, and in all fairness, he said he was, this is not technical information he knew very well. So one of the mission managers was trying to answer a question at the press briefing on Tuesday, and I kind of got it all wrong. So it was very confusing, and then I saw an article today that kind of cleared some of that up. So I thought maybe I cleared it up here. So because the engines pre-fire basically will have liquid oxygen and liquid nitrogen flowing into them before the until the ignition starts, and so I don't understand the thermodynamics, because once that engine starts, it's going to be really, really hot. But for some reason, what they're worried about is the thermal shock of the cold fuel coming in. And liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen are roughly in the minus 250 degrees Celsius, minus 260 degrees Celsius range, something like that. And there apparently is a design constraint that they don't want that fuel pumped into a ambient temperature engine, which seems kind of silly, because the minute they light the engine, it's going to go to a couple thousand degrees C in no time flat, and so you'd think it would get thermally stressed anyway. But they're worried about the cold side of the thermal stress. Which, it's probably easier to deal with thermal expansion than thermal contraction, so that there's something to be said for that.
Well, there's also a question in my mind of um, how much of that thermal energy is pouring back into the engines as while they're burning. The whole
Of
point of a
good,
good engine is that all of the energy is
yeah.
pointing down.
So that's a good point. So there's probably pumps and piping and inlet valves that actually never get very hot. I think is what you're saying. That's actually probably yeah.
Yeah,
That's really good.
all the
That's
internals of
probably
the
a really good
engine.
point because you're
Yeah.
trying to throw all the hot gas out the back to give us thrust. Uh, Perfectly fair point. So, in order to make that happen, they do a hydrogen bleed. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 minutes prior to launch. This is when they started. So there's a hydrogen bleed where they're basically feeding small amounts of hydrogen into the engine, let it evaporate, um, boil off and evaporate. To cool the engines down. And what scrubbed the launch was three of the four engines were cooling down as expected. The fourth engine was not. So they attempted to increase the hydrogen flow to get that engine to cool down, and the attempt to do that triggered a pressure relief valve on the tank. So they couldn't increase the pressure. ODG, welcome, welcome. Just looking up at my screen there. Welcome, Raiders. Pleasure to have you here. Hope you had a great stream. Not sure what you were doing today. I was out until just before my stream, so not sure if you were gaming or doing something else. But for anyone who's here who doesn't already know Old Depressed Gamer, the channel very much worthwhile checking out. Hi, Origin. The ODG, as we call him, Old Depressed Gamers channel. He does IT topics like we do, except a little bit different focus. But he also does some gaming. And hi, Red Eye, and he offers his channel as a safe place for someone with mental health issues to hang out and reach out and maybe have a private chat with him. And very worthwhile knowing. And so if you have a chance, check out this channel. We've linked it in our chat. Blender. Oh wow, I've been meaning to learn Blender. Go pull up your VOD. It's one of those tools I've never had a chance to really learn very well. That's really cool. Sorry I missed it, but I will definitely need to go check out your VOD. So, as you said, and as you guys were coming in, we were just talking about the Artemis 1 scrub. So the 3.5 hours for the left. Yeah, once you've done it once, then it all of a sudden becomes easier, doesn't it? So the Artemis 1 engines want to be cold prior to start. And so so a little bit of hydrogen fuel gets fed through them in what's called an engine bleed. So they're basically on purpose opening a valve a little bit. And I think in engines it's called and like diesel engines called a bleed valve because you bleed off unwanted air. But in this case, it's a bleed valve to allow just a little bit of fuel to escape, and in the process, cooling down the engines as you expect them to. And that didn't happen in one engine. The other three behaved as they expected. The fourth one did not. They attempted to fix that, and it caused another problem, or they couldn't do it because of another a valve that was acting in a way that they didn't totally expect. And then they were looking at the weather and saying, even if we get if we get the troubleshooting done, we probably won't be able to launch because there's not much left in the launch window. They have a really tight, it's like a 4-hour window that they have to launch in, and they have to dodge weather. And they have, I think they said in the briefing, 42 collision avoidance points along their route to orbit. So because the way their orbit works, when they get into orbit, then boost to get to the moon, they pass the debris field of broken satellites and debris and stuff twice. And they of course track the larger piece that we talked about on this channel a while back. And 42 pieces, at least on Monday, they had 42 things they were tracking that they had to avoid. And so their launch timing is constrained by a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, and during ascent, you really can't steer. You really just need the engines to blow full force and get out of the gravity well. So you don't really have much maneuvering. You really don't have much delta V side to side that you can deploy, because you need all of your power to get you out of the gravity well. So that's a really dangerous and very vulnerable spot for any vehicle ascending out of Earth gravity. So they decided to scrub the launch because they didn't know why the engine wasn't cooling down. They couldn't increase the hydrogen flow without getting that pressure relief valve popping off, and they were looking at weather constraints. So they either had to basically launch right there and then, or not launch at all, and decided to be on the cautious side and not launch at all. Before you guys came in, we're kind of joking about the fact that SpaceX, of course, blew up quite a few of their rockets on the way to their successful launches. NASA really can't afford to do that, because remember, we talked about the Artemis program. The initial SLS, initial space launch system, the heavy lift rocket they're using for this, uses the leftover shuttle engines. And they only have 12 of them. They need 12 to fly the 3 missions that they're planning to fly. So they really don't want to blow one of these vehicles up. So they're going to be super careful and treat it as if they had humans on board, in which case it would absolutely never launch unless they meet all the launch criteria. So what was both funny and sort of confusing at the press conference, I mean, they went through sort of the basics of the decision making, but then somebody asked a very reasonable question, and the answer was totally unreasonable and turned out to be wrong. But somebody asked the panel, which was high-level mission managers. I mean, it's an asset administrator and 2 mission managers. So not people with a direct technical knowledge of the system. Asked me, what temperature do these engines need to be at launch? And his answer was, and in fairness, he said, that's not my expertise. Tomorrow at the, we'll get you some technical information, talk to the media. We'll get you some technical information, and we'll get this cleared up. But I seem to recall a number like 400 degrees Rankine. And I'm going, say what? So I'm going to stop here for a second and say, does anybody remember Rankine units? Because I didn't. I feel bad.
I know they're a unit. I recognize that much. I couldn't tell you what the basis of it is.
Yeah, Red Eye, that was my reaction to it. What? Rankine is to Fahrenheit what Kelvin is to Celsius. Rankine is the Fahrenheit scale shifted so 0 is absolute 0.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes, we call them freedom units, ODG. We call them freedom units, yes. Just like freedom fries. Don't even get me started. So it was a reaction to the fact that Kelvin was something that was widely used, and so it was basically reinventing Kelvin but using the spacing of the Fahrenheit scale. So that was a really bizarre unit to use to begin with, and the number turned out to be wrong, because that's actually around 400. Rankine is actually right around the water freezing point. So that didn't make any sense to me, not with the fuel being at minus 250 degrees Celsius. So they did it was a closed briefing or the conference call of some sort, but they did a briefing on Wednesday, I think, for the media. And Space News has some pretty good reporters, and so I pulled up a Space News article that kind of summarized what was talked about. And so the engines are supposed to be at minus 250 degrees, or close to minus 250 degrees prior to launch. So roughly the temperature of liquid hydrogen, which makes a lot more sense, right? And so what happened is that at the time that they entered the countdown hold, 3 engines were at 240 minus 245 and falling. The other one was at minus 230 and holding steady. Yeah, that is chilly. And yeah, gallon. Don't even get me started on gallon. Like imperial. I don't know. There's different gallons, and yeah, right. Um, the so the interesting enough, even though they're scheduled on the launch attempt, they're really not sure what's going on. Apparently the data review suggested that the hydrogen venting out of this fourth engine, I think it's engine number 3 actually. The hydrogen venting from the engine looked normal, had all the right properties. So there's, from a physics perspective, there's no way that engine should have been warmer by 20 degrees C than the other ones, because it's acting exactly like the other ones in terms of consuming hydrogen and venting it out the back and that sort of thing. So their working theory right now is that the sensor is out of calibration, potentially. And so they're, other than going up the tower and tightening up the fill nozzle, they're going to change the procedure back to something they did during the engine tests, and start the hydrogen bleed sooner. Now, I don't know why they think that's going to fix the problem with the sensor, but it obviously gives them a lot more time to watch the temperatures change. And then they will do a go, no-go decision if that engine reports a warmer temperature than the other ones. Yeah, no, nobody's allowed near the once before fueling can start. Given the hazards, before fueling is allowed to start, the range has to be cleared. The pad has to be cleared, not the range. The pad has to be cleared. So yeah, so they have to offload the fuel, and then somebody can go up there and tighten with a wrench and tighten up the fill nozzle. But as far as the sensor, they said it is possible but not ideal to try to attempt to replace it on the pad. And so, yeah. So they're going to attempt this again on Saturday. They're going to start to bleed sooner. With presuming, I think just to get a better feel for what the temperatures are doing. Because I think their Monday countdown was designed for the engine to basically hit minus 250 very shortly before they actually light up for launch. And so now I think they're going to just basically invest a bit more of the liquid hydrogen, and let it bleed. Let that bleed continue for longer and keep the engines basically at the low temperature for longer, in the hopes that if it's not a sensor issue, just in the engine needs to settle down longer. Or if the sensor just if the sensor's out of calibration, it's just going to do the same thing. But if they see the same cooling curve just shifted by 20 degrees, they'll do a no-go decision at that point and decide whether it's safe to launch or not. And they can be, like I said, they don't want to lose this ship because they only have engines for 3 missions, so it would be quite a setback if they lost this vehicle on this launch attempt. So they want to be safe, and so I would not be surprised at all if they scrubbed again. But they have given themselves the option of clearing the vehicle for launch, even if that temperature reports 20 degrees higher than it should be. But I think for the longer time, they might be able to see, at least have a better chance to evaluate what they're seeing. So that's what we're at. Yeah, Automod is. Yeah, we've got Automod cranked up a bit. the so that's where Artemis stands. And so it'll be a fun watch, I think, on Saturday.
Hopefully it
Hopefully it
happens.
happens, but it might not. Who knows?
Hopefully.
So there we are.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought it'd be kind of a fun thing a fun thing to go over, just because, and especially with that news conference. I mean, they did a good job sort of explaining, the general decision making process, but during the question and answer, they got some technical questions that I think they really should have just deferred at all. But the fact that, I mean, that was just a really bizarre kind of answer that it's like, say what? So I feel bad for him, because he really, I think, was just trying to answer a question to the best of his recollection, and the recollection was wrong. But Rankin, indeed,
That's the one that will never not
yeah.
blow my mind. I'm like, did you mean to use Kelvin? Not that you wouldn't have
It
been
would it would have
wrong,
been just as
but
bad, but
well, at least then you would have been.
yeah, I don't know. It's just really weird, because the right answer is what, about 7250 is about like 20 or 30 Kelvin, right? It, is
If it's two, yeah, minus
Minus
273, right?
273 is absolute zero in the Celsius scale. So they're trying to get to minus 250 Celsius. That's 20, 23, 23, 24 Kelvin, not 400. He got the four right.
Say when in doubt, confuse the audience
Yeah,
and run
no kidding.
away.
Just make it up and use a weird unit, so that there would be no follow-up questions. I like that. Anyway, Pixel, did anything kind of come across your desk during the week that?
No,
Yeah,
Artemis was the big one.
it's I haven't followed up. Remember, I can't remember what the name of it is now. Remember, there's that small satellite that is testing the orbit that the gateway is going to be in eventually. Uh,
Oh, that's Oh,
I,
right.
what was
What was
that?
that?
That was weird. I just got you double. That was strange. Um,
Sorry, is it
yep.
still doubling?
We suddenly got an echo from you. At least at my end. And this is not this looks this felt. Yeah,
Try
that's
that
better.
again. That
That's
should be
better.
better. Yep.
Oh, I hate audio. I really do.
Well, no, I'm still trying to get that audio delay
Ah,
fixed, and I thought I had done something that I'd done before, but apparently it decided to.
yeah. You basically had an echo.
Apparently I
Uh,
doubled up. Apparently what I did just decided to do
yep.
a double output.
Yep.
Fun.
All right. PS the plus plus on stream. Yes.
Hey,
Um, all right. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing if you think about the engineering, and so I do want to catch up. Maybe we'll talk about the launch attempt or launch, either way, on next week. But yeah, I do want to follow up and see where that satellite, how that satellite is doing, that they were launching into the as a test into the orbit they want to put the gateway into. Um, Obviously, it's kind of a small mission that doesn't get much publicity, especially not with the launch coming up, or attempted launch coming up. But it is actually awfully important to the Artemis project overall. So it'd be kind of fun to figure out what that one's up to. Um, but yeah, that so that was the big space-based thing, uh, which I thought was kind of fun to talk about. All right. So so on to the next. Well, actually, sort of a little sidebar here as we switch over. So I do want to do a little bit of work on my project for my class. Do some setups for routing. But the So one of the things I wanted to show on screen here is, I do have an internet problem of some sort. So I've done a couple of things, and I had not played with this. And Pierre Slip, I don't know if you have or not, but this is called the Twitch Inspector, and it's essentially a more persistent version of the little display we get in our streaming in our channel dashboard. I think all it does is track bit rate, and it tracks anomalous events, outage events. So I've got this running. We've been live for a little over half an hour now without any problems, but of course that doesn't mean very much. But if we do have an outage, we drop out like we did a couple weeks ago. Um, I'll I want this up so I can see what I've got going on here. The other thing I did, which kind of harkens back to one of our first streams, a couple of first streams, this is a display from an iPerf server I set up. And I have a script running on my machine here locally that runs a 5-minute. Yeah, it's a 5-minute iPerf test, and then waits for a few seconds because I found out if I immediately try to reconnect, the server would crash. So I give it about 10 seconds for the server to kind of wind down its buffers, and then I do it again. The client does output this stuff as well, but I can right now I'm connected to my server, and so I can just take a look at it. Ultimately, I'm going to redirect this to a file as well. The occasionally we do have a loss event, but this is minor. The one time I caught one of these outage events, and this is UDP, single datagram traffic, leaving my computer going to a point in the cloud, using UDP at 100 kilobits per second roughly. So really low data rate, doesn't really impact my network. I did catch this thing during one of these outage events, and the loss rate jumped up to about 40 or 50%, which would explain why the Twitch stream had trouble. So I'm just trying to figure out how often this happens, how persistent it is. But there we are. All right. So here is what I'm going to ask my students to work on. This is the network. So we have 5 routers, and so it's a relatively it's either a representation, I can use it either way, of a little bit of the internet, right? So this guy in the middle here is sort of a representation of an internet backbone router. The two guys here and here are essentially customers utilizing the network, or ISPs providing services. The two routers over here are two customers using routers, and this guy over here would be more of a sort of a smaller customer directly served by the ISP. I mean, there's nothing terribly magical about the setup, but it gives me just enough depth here to talk a little about how forwarding of IP packets actually works. And you'll see me every now and then. I'll pop this thing up just to see if anything happened, because I just saw a glitch, but it didn't correspond to any sort of an outage. Okay. So there's a couple of sort of principles here that I wanted to get to. One of them is that we need to do some address planning. And right now I'm using IPv4. The students will then redo this exercise again with IPv6, which is it's going to be kind of interesting, exercise as well. But right now, I'm trying to set this up with IPv4. Right, and so I have a bunch of links here that whose only purpose it is to connect one router to another one. And so I'm going to use something that is sort of commonly done in ISPs and data centers. And I've got that noted up here. Um, so these are, for all practical purposes, point-to-point links. They're direct connection between two devices without any other device expected to be on that network. Now, IP addressing is weird in the sense that in any block of addresses that forms a proper internet subnet, two addresses are pre-allocated. One address is the one with all 0 bits in the host portion, the lowest number in the subnet, which is reserved for a couple of different reasons. It is notationally used as the subnet to define the subnet. It was historically used as a broadcast address, and it is now, especially in IPv6, commonly used as the all routers anycast address. So, in theory at least, routers that follow that's a fairly new standard. If somebody sends a packet to the lowest number in a subnet, that is semantically supposed to mean any router on the network. Please, the first one who sees the packet, please handle it. I don't know how widely that's implemented, but that's that. So that puts some semantics on the lowest number in a subnet that generally suggests you shouldn't be using it. The highest number in a subnet, which will have all ones in the host portion, is the actual is how we today define broadcast. So that should obviously not be assigned to a host either. So in IPv4, then where we have 32 bits of address space available, the smallest network I can make uses 30 bits for the network number and 2 bits for the host portion, meaning 4 different addresses. 2 of them are reserved, which leaves me exactly 2 addresses for the 2 devices that want to talk to each other. Now that is kind of odd when you know there are only 2 devices on the network. So there's actually a proposed standards document that suggests that it should be okay for these limited cases to just use those 2 reserved addresses. But I'm not going to assume that the VyOS operating system can actually handle that. So we are going to use the more pedestrian approach of assigning 4 addresses to each link and using the 2 that are safe for the routers. So all of these router addresses then are in the 10.0.0.something/30, and they're all /30s. So they all start with 10.0.0. And I obviously have to, so there's always 2 addresses that you can't use. So 0 is unusable. 1 and 2 I'm going to use on this link here. 3 is unusable as a broadcast. 4 is unusable. That's the next subnet number. 5 would be the next one I can use, and so on. Right? And so I'm going to have to go into these routers and basically configure that, and then make sure that I can actually talk to all the neighbors properly. And so I was in the process of doing that when the stream started, so we're going to kind of finish that first. So I need to talk to, let's start all the way over on the right-hand side. So let me check and make sure that I have 3 configured the way I want it to. I have to go back to it eventually, but you are 4, you are 3. So I am going to think let's see. Okay, so yeah, so I've configured that one on that address, but not the other one. So that's good. We will save that and let that sit for a minute. So I need to take a look at this guy here. So 4, that's this one here with the 3 interfaces, and I don't think I've done all of those yet. No, so I've done these two. There's Ethernet 0 up there. Um, and there is Ethernet 1, which is down here. So I've got one more to configure here. So let's go do that. So I need to tell it. This is the VyOS operating system, which is very similar to Juniper. So we're going to tell it that so we just need to get that one configured. So we'll do a set here. Ethernet Ether2 address will be 10.0.0.10/30. And I have to commit this, so when I do a set command, any sort of edit command, it changes the working configuration, not the running one. When I commit it, it implements the configuration in volatile memory. Then if I save it, it'll go into the boot file. So when I reboot the device, it'll come up with that same setting. Then I can exit the configuration mode and do show configuration, or actually there's a better one. I think I'm going to show interfaces. There we go. So so I've got 1. So this router has 1, 5, and 10 configured as the addresses on those 3 interfaces. Okay. Now let's see what I've done with 5, if anything yet. There's 5. No, I haven't done much with it yet. So we're going to take care of you. Yeah. So ODG. So RIP, of course, for those who don't recognize the acronym, although in a war zone, yeah, that has a whole lot of meaning. The the intent here for my class is that we'll configure this network manually, assigning IPs first, and then in a few weeks we'll go back once we've had a chance in class to talk about routing protocols like RIP, which is a little too old to be terribly useful, but there's some equivalent. OSPF, I think, is the one I'm going to use first, which is a little bit more modern. Yeah, the rule set is really small. It worked quite well. Unfortunately, it really doesn't have a good way to handle today's classless routing properly. So I think I'm going to go with OSPF as the first routing protocols the students are going to work on or work with. But same idea that you'll see at least during a little bit of the stream, we're going to try to get all the end devices to be able to talk to each other, and to do that we're going to have to install routing table entries. And we'll do that by hand now, but in the future we'll use I think OSPF initially, and then some of the other ones to make those routing entries automatic. Right. So this is number 5. So right now I'm just going to try to get the routers connected and make sure they actually talk to each other. Right. No, and I've used RIP in those scenarios, these years ago. Like I said, it's a little too dated to work properly in a lot of modern networks, and sort of does some weird things because of the classless routing that we use today. All right, so we'll get this guy set up. All right, this guy is ether 0. Okay, so this one. So this one only has so far only has that link. I'm going to deal with the actual service links here that lead to proper networks here just a little bit. All right, so there's that guy. Now I do need to. So I've dealt with this one, dealt with these two, so I need to go to number 2. All right. Yeah, I haven't done that one yet at all. So we'll move this over here. If you need me to make these bigger, let me know. But hopefully that's sort of kind of readable on stream. Um, so I can make my life a little bit easier here. So this is number 2. I want ether 0. Dot 0.0.9/30. And ether 1. 10.0.0.14. Okay. So before I started this, I made some notations on the canvas here so I can remember what I'm. Uh, okay. Y3, yes. We will eventually go to BGP. Kind of bear with me for it'll be several weeks. It'll be a couple weeks at least. So I'm going to do this. And I think today on stream we'll get basically as far as setting up static routing in this environment. Um, uh, I'll get to that in just a sec. So just to answer your question, so the path here is going to be I'm going to get this thing set up to where it works properly with static routes. I'm going to then add IPv6, and then I'll turn around and do OSPF. And after that, the next step will be to do BGP. So it'll be some weeks from now. But kind of check the stream if you have a chance from time to time. We'll definitely do BGP. And let's see. Let's double check and see where we're at here. Twitch says I've had a couple of drops in frame rate,
You had a
but
moment there.
nothing terrible. Couple.
Yeah, that was it
Twitch
was
does not show those as outages. Let's see what.
no, you
Yeah,
didn't
let's
fully
see what
drop.
my server saw. Interesting enough, the servers, my actual test connection saw nothing. So this is not the same problem. So there may be, it could be that.
You interestingly, it was a little bit of time ago. So I don't know if you how far back you're going, but um you did indeed you did indeed robot
Hmm.
on me.
Yeah, I see no. This goes quite a ways back. Each of these is a 5 minute block, and so I
Yeah.
see no losses outbound. But again, I'm sending relatively small UDP streams. Interesting.
Yeah, say just to us losing one packet there.
I
Yeah.
just don't I
I don't
don't
know.
so Twitch didn't see a whole lot of problems. Um,
It was a
yeah,
very brief hiccup, so
yeah.
it may have been something
And
different.
what three? Yeah, no, that I've had. Um, I've had that happen with other streams. Twitch has been struggling a little bit in their infrastructure. Um, uh, so yeah, it does. I mean, that's what I'm trying to narrow down. Is it me or is it something else? Um, right now, I seem to be sending okay according to Twitch's tool and my own analysis, but uh, there's still a problem somewhere. One of the things that I suspect is happening is that, and to speak about routing, I personally, given on some of the other sort of ad hoc tests I've done, I think Spectrum, my internet provider, has routing issues. I think they're obviously they're using dynamic routing protocols, and I think they're having what are called route flaps or something like that, where a couple of routers rapidly change their mind about where they want to send packets. And so whether or not there's an outage might very well depend, or whether you perceive an outage, like my audio going to PXLib, um, could very well depend on what path the packets were trying to take. And so my diagnostics may not show that if they're taking a different path that isn't affected at the moment. It's still pretty weird. Okay, so I've got my central. Y3. I hope that kind of answered your question. So yes, I'm ultimately the ultimate goal is to have a network, probably a little bit with a couple of edit routers, just to just to make things look realistic. But the end goal here is to have some of the routing information distributed via BGP, which is of course what we do on the internet at the backbone level. Um, Yeah, that's a long delay, ODG. Hopefully what I've got here is not quite that bad. All right, so grab one more router to configure, and then we can kind of go through and see if they can actually all talk to each other um, up to a point without having um, knowledge of what's going on elsewhere. Um, right, so I want to look at number one here. Grab that guy, minimize you. So this is the guy over here, all the way on the left. Okay, I'll be 0. Address will be 10.0.0. What do I want to do there? 13. I probably shouldn't save these yet, being overconfident here, but that's okay. All right, so this router, so this is number one, the way all the way on the left, uh, should be able to talk to the one in the middle, number two. So I should be able to test that. And that address is 14. So that's basically just testing that that point-to-point setup works, and it does. All right, so I have a verified connection from here to here. but I won't be able to go anywhere else. Like, so I could, so if I try to reach, let's say, VyOS 4, the side that's facing me is 10.0.0.10. If I try to do that, that should fail, right? Because there's no route, there's no way to do that. Now, the way we're going to set this up, this guy up here, number 2, is going to be our master router, initially at least. So everyone else is going to defer to number 2 as their default. Now, I need to remind myself how to set that up. And let's see, let's jump over here again. Yeah, it looks like we had another kind of a drop and then a spike in bitrate, but nothing that Twitch considers terribly harmful. All right, so let me take a look at this real quick. I think protocols is where I want to go. Static, okay. So in VyOS, a static route is still under protocols. So what I want to do here is basically specify a range of addresses as a subnet in subnet notation, and then where to send that to next. And so in this case, what I'm going to try and do is to tell number 1 here, the one I'm logged into right now, that if it doesn't have a more specific route, I wanted to defer to number 2, VyOS 2 up here. So let's see if I can make this work. Now I can do that and see what do you want next. I want a route. And now it wants it. And so what I'm trying to do is, I believe VyOS uses the this notation. So all 0/0 matches any address. So I think that's the default route. And then I want to tell it where to go, which would be 10.0.0.14. See if it accepts that. Nope. What am I missing? All right. Is not valid. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more reading here. This is why we're doing this here. Might be easier if I just let's just do a Google search and figure out how this guy wants to do default.
Isn't it? You scrolled by the black hole route. Isn't that what you wanted? Potentially. I'm just guessing.
No, black hole is a route. That's a route where you want packets discarded. So.
Yep, discard. That was I caught a tiny
Sorry
bit of the
that.
paragraph and I couldn't tell if it said no, you're fine.
Yeah. So I do VyOS set default route. It's a top. This is Google search, so I'm not the only one looking for that. Oh, I forgot a keyword. That's what it is. That's all it was. I did it right, except I didn't do it right. How's that for a cop-out? There we go. Now I'm not going to save this one because I'm not sure that I want it this way. Now I should be able to show protocols, static route. Whoops. I hate the caps lock key. Okay, what can I do here? Static. Okay. All right, tell me what I can do here. I don't want to do ARP. Okay. Route map. Back to Google. I know I've done it. I've just forgotten what the command is to show the route table. Show IP. Okay. So this is very slow, but I'm I like the VyOS operating system, but they're not super consistent. So I set a route by doing a set protocol static, but I can't show it that way. I have to do apparently something like this. There we go. Which is kind of inconsistent, right? I didn't do a set IP route. I did a set protocol static route, but if I do a show protocol static, it wants to show me ARP information, not routing tables. I find that odd. I find that rather odd. Okay, so but what this shows us is that we have a static route that should defer to VyOS number 2 if I don't know how to route something. And of course, it has a directly connected network which overrides that. So now let's see what happens if we attempt to ping. So what I was trying to do is ping the next router past VyOS number 2, which is right there. And that does not work. Why does that not work? Because VyOS 2 should be able to do this. We need to go there first and figure out. So it's no longer telling us it can't find it. It's just, I know why. Anybody venture a guess why that didn't work? Let me move this out of the way a little bit. All right, so we are here on number 1. It knows how to. It knows. We know we can connect to number 2. We told it that any data we want, any packets we don't understand, that this guy doesn't understand, is supposed to send to number 2. And so number 2 should then be able to forward to number 3. And they all these addresses are supposed to be set up. Although ODG, you're right. I need to. So you're right. Number 4, this guy here, cannot respond because it doesn't have a routing entry that lets it get all the way back to me. So I've only solved half the problem. I've got half the routes done, but not the other half. All right, so now I have to decide how I want to do that. So I said this guy here, number 2, needs to be kind of the oracle. It needs to do everything. It needs to know everything. So 4 then can refer back to 2 as its default, and 3 and 5 can go to 4 as the default. So basically, the idea is that we kind of route up the pyramid, right? And so number 2 is kind of the top of the pyramid that has to understand everything. So I'm going to have to go into number 2 and make sure that it knows where everything else is that we're setting up. So let's go ahead and find number 2 here. All right, so number 2, well, I could do it with number 3 as well. Well, it doesn't really matter. So number 2 it is. All right, so number 2 has got it's got these 2 addresses, so it's connected to us and to 4. So for now, it knows where number 1 is, just because that's a direct connection. And it knows where 10 is, so it knows where VyOS 4 is from its perspective. But to make this work properly, I'm going to have to tell it where this point-to-point link is, where this point-to-point link is, if I want to be able to reach those networks. And for diagnostic purposes, I may want to. So we're going to have to do that. All right, so I'm in 2. So I need to tell it that for 10.0.0. Okay, so this one here, the network is connecting 3 to 4. The network number is 0. And from router 2's perspective, that needs to go to there. And I forgot the next hop again. Oh, and I forgot the set. Okay. I'm playing around with the VyOS interface a little bit here. So what can I set here? I forgot. I need a route. Well, can I add that to the path? Nope. So I need to do something like this. Set route. See if this works. Next hop, yeah, it does. And from number 2's perspective, that would go to 10.0.0.10. Okay. I need to do the same thing with the link from 4 to 5, which is 4. Okay, now I'm on number 2, so I should be able to, of course, reach 10. Better make sure I can. So I haven't done that yet. I can. Now, I won't be able to reach past it because I haven't configured the devices past it yet. So we would have the same problem again. So I need to talk to 4 now. So I can take 2 and minimize it. Let's talk to 4 and see what it knows so far. It only knows its directly connected networks, so we'll jump in here. And this router number 4 is going to use 2 as the all-knowing one. So we'll go to 10.0.0.9. Okay, so let's try it from 4. Remember when we were on 1, we couldn't ping 4 because we could get packets there not back, we believe. So let's see if we can talk to 1 now. Yes. Well, 3 ping ether 0 on VyOS 2. Yes, so we'll check that one first. So I'm on 4, so I can ping 2. Now the question is, can I go beyond it? Because at this point, 1 should be configured correctly to allow this to happen. So I should be able to go to 13, which is which is over here. And that worked. Cool. All right, so what we've done here is we're on VyOS 4, so we're over here. So we requested a packet that this router doesn't know anything about. It sent it to number 2, which did know that that's where it needs to go. VyOS 1 in return tries to reply, says I don't know where that is, sends it to 2, which knows we're here and sends it back to us. So that worked. Cool. Now we have to do the same thing on 3 and 5. So we have to configure 3 and 5 to treat 4 as a default. So let's do this with 3. I'm trying to only have one console window open at any given point in time to not make this too confusing. It's confusing enough as it is. Oh, I'm in configuration mode. Okay, so there's only this one only has one connect, right? That makes sense. Okay, so for number 3, we want to go to 4, so which is on 10.0.0.1. All right, so let's test it. So we're on router 3, so let's make sure we can see router 4. That is 1. We can. Let's see if we can see router 2, which is 10.0.0.9. We can. Let's go for broke and see if we can get to 13. Yes, Odiji says it's always good to have at least 10 windows open so the boss thinks you're busy. Yeah, I dig it. Let's talk to 13, which is all the way over on VyOS 1, and that works as well. Very good. So we do one more router, number 5, just to complete the process. And that's over here. Oh. Okay, and for router 5, we want to go to router 4 as our default, so that'll be 10.0.0.5. And let's go for broke and see if we can ping all the way over to the other side. If you noticed, I used the run command, which means I don't have to exit configure mode. I can issue an operational level command while I'm still in configure mode. Let's go to 13. See if that works. It does. I love it when things work. Right. So what we've done so far then on our canvas here, we have our 5 routers, and we are now able to communicate back to back from each one to each one. So the routers can all communicate with each other. What we need to do now is obviously configure some networks that are a bit more interesting. Let's see, where are we at time-wise here? So let me give it a shot here over on the left-hand side, because I'm using an Ubuntu. I think it's an Ubuntu or maybe Ubuntu-like or light container for as a client, and I don't know that I've actually tried to configure those, so we'll find out. So the idea is that, and you see I've put the network up here, so this one will be 10.0.8.0 with a /24, so it's a kind of a small business class network. So we're going to give the router an address at the top of that range. So let's go ahead and do that, which means I need to find the interface of VyOS 1. There it is. Minimize that. Okay, and so I go back into configure mode, and this is Ether1, so I'm going to set interfaces Ethernet Ether1 to an address, of 10.0.8.0/24. Nope. What do I do here? I know exactly what I did. So this was interesting. So I accidentally typed in the network number, and the VyOS, when we talked earlier about the network number being a reserved address, VyOS wouldn't accept it. So that scheme of using just 2 addresses on a point-to-point link would have failed with VyOS. I just accidentally verified that. So
Nice.
what we do is we use the highest usable address. So 255 in the 4th octet would be broadcast. So we do 254. It took that. We're going to commit that. Okay. So that link is now established. So now I've got to set this guy up, and that's something that I just haven't done before. So this is IPTerm number 1. I need to go find that guy in this huge list. There we go. All right. So this is I'm at the root level. It's a Linux-like operating system. So I can do like IP ADR list, and it will show me. What I don't remember is how I use the IP subsystem. I can do this. I know how to do this with something like ifconfig, but I don't know how to do the IP subsystem to set and there. To set and it'll be temporary because it wouldn't last through a reboot. But so I need to look this up. I don't know if I think I want to deal with a man page on here. I don't even know if a man is installed. Nope, I didn't think so. Because this is kind of a lightweight container, so we'll jump over here. All right. Uh, yeah, so I do something like IP address add an address on a device with a particular interface. Okay, I can do that, I think. So I did an IP ADR list. My interface is Ether0, which it also shows me on the canvas. This is the Ubuntu community replaced the ifconfig command with the IP command, like what was a pxlib, what, 10 years ago?
Oh, I would say it was a long
And
time ago.
it's still, I mean, I'm one of those old fogies who I just install ifconfig and go on my merry way. And of course, some of my colleagues use there's a ton of utilities you can use in Linux that will do the same thing I'm about to do here. Plus, you also could change the configuration file, so that sort of reboot all those sort of things. And most of those are basically, yeah. Well, three. It does. It I just always have to look at the syntax. Um, so a lot of my colleagues who are more server admins, not I mean I'm kind of a networking guy, but the server admins have basically sort of picked their favorite graphical user interface tool from the Ubuntu instances that, or Debian instances that actually have a graphical user interface, and then basically learn the command language interface to those tools. So they go ahead and install NetManager, which is the I think Ubuntu's graphic user interface user tool, and just basically use the command line version of that, install and use the command line version of it, which is perfectly fine. It just yet one more thing to learn. Um, so I'm going to see if I can make this work. So I'm going to add 10.0.0. Let's give it whoops, not 0. 10.0.8. I'm going to give it the lowest usable address. It's a /24, and it's on device Ether0. Let's see if it lets me do that. Well, it did. So let's see if I can ping the router address from here. Nope. Why not? Why not? Destination host unreachable. That is kind of strange. And who reported that? Oh, it went all the way over to. Good Lord, where did that go? Interesting. It then went all the way over to VyOS 4. Why? That is bizarre. How did I do that?
You doing this again? Oh,
What on earth did I do here? There you go. What did I mess up? That should not have gone where it went. I must. Okay, so what did I configure into my route? Good God, where did this go? That is really strange. Let's look at VyOS 1 again, see what I did to it. So I screwed something up. Oh, good God, yes. Ah, yeah, I totally screwed that up. I put it on the wrong network. Yeah. Good God. Why did it actually go anywhere? I'm really confused that anything picked that up. That's really odd. That shouldn't have never gone anywhere. That should have just. Okay. All right. That should be better here.
Remind me, cider blocks. That the last in a slash 24, the last whatever byte. Sorry, there's the word I was looking for. The last byte is essentially arbitrary, right?
Yeah.
So if you 10.0.8.1/24 is equivalent to 10.0.8.254
Well,
slash
they're both
24,
in the same
correct?
network. They're different
Yes.
hosts in the same network.
Yes, but I guess the question I was asking is when you are using the cider notation that slash 24 removes that byte as a
Well,
particular thing. And I may not just be following in this particular instance.
uh,
The use case is different,
yeah,
but
I think it'll complain when I add the address. I have to put the cider block in because it needs to know that at the same time. And then when I try to delete it, which I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing here.
so it's essentially a VyOS peculiarity is that it wants to know the IP address and the cider block at the same time in the same
Correct.
notation.
Uh, so
Gotcha. Sorry, I'm just thinking of AWS subnets, and I would it would always be .0/24 when I'm
yes,
describing the IP address
yes, that
range.
is the range. So that's what I have up here, right? That is the 10.0.8.0/24 would describe the range of addresses, which starts
Mm-hmm.
with that number and goes all the way to 10.0.8.255.
Eight dot. Yeah.
No, ODG, it's not the local switch. It's a notation for that range of addresses. And PSLip is right. And so what I'm doing is I'm giving this device, um, I'm giving this device I was trying to give this device a specific. I need to commit this. A specific address in that range, and I screwed it up. Okay, so now the router has the address I wanted it to have. Uh, so
Always good.
so the CIDR notation, uh, I can determine the subnet, the range of addresses, from any address as long as I give you the prefix. That's the number behind the slash,
Yeah.
right? So VyOS and other operating systems, Linux, same way, right? You saw me do this in the IP address add command in the most operating systems now, if you on the command line configure an address, it expects the CIDR notation so it can install the correct network mask at the same time. Right? So
That makes
we
sense.
go back to
Yeah.
our we go back to this guy here. This is the minimize him. So this is this IP terminal right over here. So if I do a show IP address, whoops. Oh, damn. Too many operating systems. IP address list. There we go. Um, so if you notice, it actually it doesn't show it anymore. In the I'm not sure what operating system this is. Some versions of this would actually show the old network mask as well. This one doesn't do that anymore. But that's it. So if you configure Windows by hand, you would put an address in one entry field and a network mask in the next one. This is the equivalent of that, but faster. So now let's try this ping again from here. Okay. So now I can talk to the interface on my router properly. Um, Now, it should be able to do something like this. Yep, there's a route command. So I don't know what it does. So I just okay, cool. So we can do a route, add default, I think. Because I have to do the same thing on this device. No such device. Okay, how does that work? Okay. Interesting. Default should be on internet. No such device. Let's try that. Oh, that's the same. That's the same listing. Okay.
If you throw inet at the end of it, get the specific help specific to
I just
that
did the same one.
address family. Oh, does it
Yep,
dump that exact
exact
same thing?
same one.
That's utterly
Yeah.
useless. Wow.
Says so it's route add. Let's do a little searching here and see what we find. Oh, oh God, I hate this. I hate this. It's a the route command is very old. It actually goes back to System 5 Unix. But of course, in the infinite wisdom, when it was ported over to Linux, they added some things. So I think what I need to do is this: gateway, and the device is Ether0. Let's see if it takes that. Okay. It now is a default route going to our router. That is a good thing. So let's see if we can close on a win here and ping something far away like that guy. 2. Nope. How far can I get? Oh, that's because that one doesn't know. I should be able to ping the far side of our own router, however. Yep, I can do that. So the problem is if I try to go beyond, if I go beyond this router here, I need to make sure my router over in the one that is the Oracle all-knowing, it needs to know that this thing exists. So we need to go back to VyOS 2 and fix that. which is the last thing we'll do today on stream. So where is number 2? Show IP route. Yes. Okay. Configure. Set protocol. Static. Route. I want to go tell it what 10.0.8.0 to pixel to your point. This is the like you would do with in AWS. This is the subnet number. So this is the identifier for the subnet, and I have to add the /24 in the route specification to specify that entire subnet is over there, because I could be and we're not going to do it today. But on the other side of this, my network, the two separate networks on the right-hand side can actually be combined. So the router in the middle will see those as a single network.
Yeah.
And the next hop for this is going to be from number 2. The next hop is going to be 10.0.0.13. Let's commit that and see if that works. So now we go back into this guy here.
That's interesting. Do you actually call that supernetting?
Yes.
Is it a
yes,
supernet?
So let me minimize. So that worked. Just for the record, Y3. Yes, that would sometimes be referred to as supernetting. Correct. So let me minimize these instead. So first of all, this succeeded, right? So what happened here is that we were over here on the left-hand side at the IPTerm 1, and I requested a ping against this side of VyOS number 3. So it uses default route, send it to VyOS number 1. Number 1 uses default route to send it to number 2. Number 2 knows that network goes via number 4, and number 4 knows where it is. So then 3 says, oh, I'm replying to this network here. I don't know where it is. I'll send it to 4. 4 says, I don't know where it is. I'll send it to 2. And we just told 2 that it's over here and it can find it. So that worked. And now over here, we'll have 2 different networks. So VyOS 3 and 5 are going to be connected to these individual networks. 4 is going to have to know that those individual networks are on 3 and 5, but 2 can combine the 2, which is supernetting. So at the top of the internet, I try to combine as many routes as I can. Okay. All right. That's all I'm going to do for tonight. I'm getting VyOS and IP'd and routed out. Any sort of last thoughts before we wrap up for today?
I do not have anything.
Let me check something real quick here. So my diagnostics say we were doing all right. Let's see what Twitch thinks we were doing. Twitch says we had no unusual events, and the stream stayed up. So yeah, I don't really have to learn anything, but whatever. All right. Well, as always, big thanks to anyone who's here with us live. If you haven't, if you're not following us already, would much appreciate if you did that on Twitch. If you're watching the VOD, same thing. Love to do that. If you're seeing this on YouTube, and there's a good chance you might, so I will almost certainly upload this to YouTube. On YouTube, we'd love to, for you to hit the thumbs up button to kind of let Google know that you like this sort of content, and if you feel like it, hit the subscribe button so you know when I upload, we upload more content. With that, again, my big thanks to everyone. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on your place around the world or sleep schedule. And I very much hope you will join us next week at the same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time in the U.S. Until then, have a wonderful, wonderful time. Bye-bye now.